this off. We know each other, obviously, like Jonathan Cohn.
Zayda Ortiz, again, sorry.
We'll kick it over to you to tell them a little bit about, kind of take 2 minutes, tell us who you are, why you're running, and then we'll go into some questions.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here with you today. I am Tanisha Sullivan, a candidate for Secretary of State. I'm very excited to be among so many friends, certainly having worked with many of you, particularly those located in the greater Boston area, on issues that matter most to communities and families, particularly those who are among the most vulnerable, fighting on issues related to racial, economic, and social justice, including funding for our public schools, ensuring that we have safe and secure communities, ensuring that we have greater economic opportunity and justice embedded in our public policies and throughout our government, and certainly on the issue of health equity, which has hit home for so many of us over the last 2 years. We know each other. And again, it's good to be here with you. In this moment, I stand before you as a candidate for Secretary of State. And I'm running for Secretary of State primarily because I believe that there is no office in our state government that has greater responsibility and greater potential to help us deliver on really those issues and the advancement of those issues in the racial, economic, and social justice space. When you think about it, the Secretary of State's office touches so many aspects of our lives and certainly the full spectrum of democracy, from the point of one registering to vote and exercising that right to vote, to the point of one deciding that they want to run for office, to the point of one deciding that they want to start a business or a nonprofit. So many points along the democracy spectrum are touched by this office. And I believe in this moment that we need more. We need more than an office that is solely focused on the transactional nature of the work, the administrative nature of the work, but an office that is actively engaged with and in communities, helping us all drive the change that our communities so desperately seek. I believe that this moment requires leadership that is not only courageous and inclusive, but leadership that is visionary, that is able to take where we are in this moment and really cast a great vision for what we can be. So that here in Massachusetts, at a time when so many across the country are feeling disconnected, disappointed, and quite frankly, frustrated with democracy, Massachusetts can serve as a blueprint, a model, a beacon for what democracy can truly be. Again, I am excited to be here with you today. Excited for the conversation, and I know that that I'm not only among friends, but I'm among co-conspirators in the work, in the movement, and I hope that we will be able to continue to do this work together here in Massachusetts.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tanisha. I appreciate you. You are here with us at Progressive Mass. And so my very first question is, what does progressive mean to you? And what do you see our biggest obstacles are to achieving the progress, and that you think that we need to get a more equitable Commonwealth?
Zayda, thank you so much for that question, because it gives me an opportunity to not only share what I believe progressive is, but also to talk a little bit about where I think we need to move within the progressive movement, quite frankly. Progressive for me, and those who ascribe to progressive ideology, is about the advancement of really societal well-being writ large. Bearing in mind that to make it plain, bearing in mind that we all have responsibility for one another, and ensuring that each of us not only has the opportunity to fully benefit from all of the promises that this country has made to us, so freedom, justice, and equality, but that we are all truly experiencing it, and the two are different. I believe most importantly, that being progressive, identifying as progressive, has to be more than a noun. It has to be a verb. It requires action. It's more than just saying this is the label that I want to ascribe to me, but it is reflected in the work that we're doing. It's reflected in the policies that we're advancing and the fights that we choose to take on. I think there is, I am a civil rights leader, right? I'm a practicing lawyer, but I'm also a civil rights leader, and specifically a civil rights leader focused on racial justice, where I hope to see us, particularly those of us in Massachusetts, where I hope to see us lean in a little bit more, is on the racial justice front, and really take the time to better understand kind of where the intersections of progressivism and race and the racial justice movement meet, and work to ensure that in all that we're doing, whether we are actively involved in climate justice or economic justice or in the LGBTQ movement or in gender equity, that we are also mindful to put a racial equity lens on the issues and on the policies that we're advancing, because that matters. And I think that it can be easy, absent great intentionality, even within this movement,
Right.
to lose sight of that.
Right. No, I mean, we've just lost another Black trans woman in Chicago, my activist friends, and it's just, if we're not centering the most marginalized people, as Ayanna says, what are we doing? What are we doing as progressives? Thank you for that.
No, yeah, I definitely appreciate that point about like kind of intentionality kind of in design, almost, that if policies need to be designed. It reminds me of a line from Don Berwick back in 2014 about every system is perfectly designed for the results that it gets. So if something is not in design from the start, it's not going to be an outcome. So in a recent article, elections lawyer Mark Elias wrote that by improving voting rights in their states, Democrats will level up what is expected as the norm for voting rights and accessibility, calling on for the need, especially for blue states, not to be kind of upping their game on what voting rights look like.
Jonathan,
so what are some reforms that you would want to see Massachusetts pass?
Oh, John, can you hold on?
Sorry, yeah. I am actually having. Can you start over again?
No problem.
Computer, you're going in and out for me. Sorry, I just
no
made
problem at all.
You need to hear it's a complicated question. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so I was just citing there was a kind of a recent article from election lawyer Mark Elias, who was highlighting about how when it comes to improving voting rights in the US, it is something that like blue states, in addition to red states, need to do, especially because one thing that you'll sometimes hear is when there's talk about the need to, let's say, fight like the rollback of voting laws in Georgia, and maybe that's something that's actually like that restriction that they're passing is something already on the books in a number of blue states. And was arguing how kind of blue states, like a place like Massachusetts, needs to be upping our game each year kind of continually on what voting rights and voting access look like here. So I want to say, let's say, what reforms would you advocate for to not just have Massachusetts catch up to where other states are now, but to also truly lead on voting rights?
Yes, thank you for this question. So here's where I want to make sure to make this to make this point, because I think this question really strikes at the heart of what we're experiencing here in the country as it relates to not just protecting against voter suppression, but actually the advancement of voting rights. And quite frankly, it speaks to why I'm running for Secretary of State in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Okay. It is critically important for those of us who care deeply about voting rights in this country, and therefore the protection of our democracy and the advancement of our democracy, to do both: protect and defend against suppression, as active suppression, as we're seeing in so many states across the country, and actively looking for opportunities to advance voting rights in states where we believe the ground is fertile for the advancement. We need to do both. And we've got to do both because, look, our democracy is still young. There's still work to do when it comes to strengthening democracy. And so if we are not actively looking for ways to advance, actively looking for ways to strengthen democracy where we can, particularly in states where we can, then we do truly run the risk of not only regressing in the direction of some states where there's active voter suppression, but we also run the risk of remaining stagnant. And a stagnant democracy is just as bad as a democracy that is being torn apart at its root. Okay. And so when, talking about this issue with my colleagues in the civil rights community across the country, talking about this issue with other democracy leaders across this country, Massachusetts is one of those states that many are looking to as a potential, as having great potential for the advancement of voting rights, and quite frankly, as a bellwether for where we actually are in the country. Okay. And so, yes, Jonathan, to your point, we have to, with great deliberate speed here in Massachusetts, we've got to catch up. The Votes Act certainly presents us with an opportunity in this moment to catch up and to catch up quickly. So we've got to continue to beat that drum to ensure that we actually get permanent mail-in balloting here in Massachusetts, that we've got same-day voter registration here in Massachusetts, that we are ensuring our participation in ERIC, that those who have the right to vote behind the wall actually have the opportunity to vote from behind the wall, right? We've got to do that work, and we've got to do it at an accelerated pace to catch up. But then, yes, we have to really lean into the opportunity to look for policies that will help us to advance. So whether we're talking about or whether we lean into the conversations that are happening in many municipalities across the Commonwealth around lowering the voting age, particularly in municipal elections, which I firmly support, primarily because I believe it's part of the learning process for our young people to be able to actively engage in democracy, particularly in their own backyards. Or it is ensuring that when it comes to linguistic access on the ballot, that we are really doing the work to ensure that regardless of what language you speak or read, that if you've got the right to vote, you can actually exercise that right. Okay. I did see in the chat, I want to lift up ranked choice voting. That is yet another voting rights advancement policy that certainly we've seen at the municipal level across the Commonwealth, whether it's Amherst or Cambridge, that I'm not giving up on. Look, I was a co-chair for the ranked choice Massachusetts. I believe in really looking at voting advancements like ranked choice voting to bring about greater not just equity and opportunity within the system, but also to ensure that the voice and will of the people is actually advanced. Bottom line here, Jonathan, is that in order for us to advance, we can't fear conversation. We can't fear debate. Right? We can't shut it down before it starts because we're concerned about what it might lead to. And so as Secretary of State, my commitment is that not only will I support the advancement of voting rights, but I'm going to champion the advancement of voting rights. And I'm going to do that by using my voice, platform, and also good old-fashioned rolling up my sleeves as I have always done, working side by side with communities to help ensure that folks at the ground level can really create the type of democracy that they want to see, that we all want to see in our own backyards.
Thanks. That's very thorough, and I appreciate all the work that you have done to advance voting rights, because we are falling behind for sure. In Of course, the Secretary of the Commonwealth is not just about elections, and I think people forget that. So, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for progressive change in the other functions that your office would would do?
Yeah. So here's another piece that I hope people will take away from this conversation. Um, I am a champion of democracy. Okay. And that means it's voting plus. Zayda, right? It's voting plus. Voting is a point in the full spectrum of democracy engagement.
Yep. It's the baby
There's
step.
so much more. And so, as Secretary of State, there are a few areas where I believe there's an opportunity with the power that exists in the office right now today to help strengthen our democracy. One certainly is in the area of really engagement with communities, specifically as it relates to the access to information. So the Secretary of the Commonwealth or Secretary of State is also the Chief Information Officer in the Commonwealth. And very often when we talk about that role, it is limited in scope to accessing public records. Yes, that is a critically important part of the role from an administrative standpoint. But my vision for this office is beyond administration. It is about how we can be more actively engaged. And as part of that, I believe that we not only must ensure the transparency and accessibility of public records and public information, but that as Secretary of State, we've got to ensure that folks know how to use the information. It's not just for, those who are in the know, but the information must be readily accessible to people, regular people, everyday people, to be able to use it. And so part of the responsibility, I believe, of a Secretary of State's office is to help to ensure that people know how to use the information so that folks are empowered in their communities. How will we do that? We'll do that by having a vision of the office that goes beyond four walls. If there's any office in our state government that must be connected to our communities, it is the Chief Democracy Office. And so having an office that is truly in communities, whether it's by physical space, right? Currently, there are two offices outside of the Boston office, one in Springfield, one in Fall River. So if it's also thinking about what other physical space the office should be taking in across the Commonwealth, thinking about the heart of the Commonwealth, certainly with the Worcester area, right? And thinking about how the office can have a greater presence in communities. Forget about a physical building, but connected to grassroots organizations, community-based organizations that are doing the work in community and have the trust of community. What would it look like? What would our census numbers look like if we had a Secretary of State's office that didn't just show up every 10 years, but was there every year, building relationship, connected to community, helping us not just registering folks to vote, but helping people to know what they can do after the vote, which is show up at the town council meeting, show up at the city council meeting, show up at the school board meeting, the water board meeting, helping to drive and make the decisions that truly do impact what's happening in and to families across the Commonwealth today. A much more expansive vision for what's possible, Jonathan and Zayda. The last piece I'll make, last example I'll give is in the economic opportunity space. I am a civil rights leader who's been focused primarily on advancing racial equity. There's no greater issue in the civil rights community today, in the racial justice community today, than democracy. And part of democracy, part of a reflective of a strong democracy, is one in which we have economic opportunity and there's economic equality. And the fact of the matter is, today, Massachusetts is one of the most economically unequal states in our country. We experience great prosperity, but we've got deep, deep economic gaps, wealth gaps. We've got to do something about that. And that means every office, every elected official should be looking for ways to address that issue. I believe there's great opportunity through the Secretary of State's office to do that today. Secretary of State's office is the place you got to go if you want to do business in the Commonwealth, if you want to register a nonprofit in the Commonwealth. You got to go through the Secretary of State's office. Currently, it's very transactional, administrative, and bureaucratic in nature. You go there to register, file your annual reports, and pay your fees, period. It could do so much more. It could be the place where, as you're registering your business, you can be connected to the supplier diversity office. If you're a woman-owned business, a veteran-owned business, an LGBTQ business, a minority-owned business, it can be the place you can go to be connected to nonprofit resources in your community to provide you with technical supports as a small, micro, Main Street business. Low-hanging fruit that can truly open the door, the gateway to economic opportunity and prosperity. When I think about the crisis that we have in our Commonwealth related to housing, affordable housing, there again, the office can play a role in helping to promote the development of more affordable housing, can play a role in helping to promote smart development, climate resilient development. With the power that exists today, there's so much that can be done through that office, but it does require vision, a passion and commitment to people, and a deep, deep belief in what a strong, expansive, and vibrant democracy can be.
Awesome, thank you. And one thing I want to go a little bit, you hit on, that I want to go a little bit more into, is the role of how would you want to use, especially when it comes to issues around kind of open data with the office, of what are the different ways that office can better use technology to make the information that the office has accessible, both accessible to people and used, especially even if that's like used by external researchers and academia, foundations, the media, or just by the general public.
So Jonathan, one of the very first things we're going to do is we're going to modernize that website.
Hallelujah.
Wow, how revolutionary. Okay, we're going to modernize that website. Low-hanging fruit, right? Because it's not enough for information to be available if it's not readily accessible. Okay, right? And so I do believe that, again, particularly in Massachusetts, where we are a technology hub, not just for the country, but for the world. There's no reason why we should not be really incubator for how to better use, or how technology can be better used to help make democracy more accessible, help make democracy more engaging, meaning helping to connect more people to our government, connecting more people to what's happening in their communities from a civic standpoint, from a civic engagement standpoint. And so I'd like to see, as part of the work, us leaning into to more innovation in that space, and really bringing into the democracy work of the Commonwealth, folks from, academia, folks from industry, right along folks on the ground level, in the grassroots level, at the community level, to help innovate. I think the most important piece of this for me is, or the biggest challenge we have in this moment, in terms of being able to realize the type of democracy that we want: a strong democracy, an inclusive democracy, a values-based democracy, one where there's great economic opportunity for folks, one where we've got a strong public education system. The challenge we have is one related to people and how we can attract more people into our democracy, who want to be actively engaged. That's the biggest challenge I see for us. And I believe that in order for us to really overcome that challenge, we've got to work to build relationship, which means we've got to work to build trust, and we've got to find different ways to connect, and technology to connect with people. And technology can certainly help with that.
Thank you so much. So Tanisha, we're going to switch gears, and we're going to do kind of a quick lightning round, rapid questions. And so our first one is, they're all lighthearted, so don't worry, nothing too. What was your favorite binge during COVID? What did you watch to just relax and check out and rest your brain and just get involved?
Oh dear. It's like one long. So many shows. So I enjoyed Bridgerton, and also The Equalizer with Queen Latifah, because I'm actually old enough to remember the original Equalizer, just saying. And I love that too, but I really do like the remake.
Same.
Nice. And where's your favorite spot in Massachusetts to go when you want to recharge?
Oh goodness, so many wonderful places. I love driving out to the Berkshires, but kind of closer to home, Wollaston Beach.
Nice.
Oh, but but I love Martha's Vineyard too. I mean, so many wonderful places. Okay, I'll stop.
Well, no, but it depends, right? Like what your mood strikes. I hear you.
It does. But no, I lean toward water places. Yeah. And the beauty is that we've got a lot of living on the in Eastern Mass, a lot of great places to go for that. So
all right, last question. Who should play you in the movie?
Oh God. CSI, no, not Law and Order Organized Crime. It's the newest member of the series. Yeah. Okay. Sergeant Bell. So Danielle.
Yeah, I can't think of her name.
Truitt. I believe it's her last. Love her. Love her. Mm-hmm.
And then I'll do kind of a final closing question, that after you talk with a voter, how would you want them to describe you in one sentence?
In one sentence?
Yeah.
A run-on sentence?
Can be.
Okay. All right. That I hope that folks see me as someone who cares deeply about people and community, that I'm a values-driven visionary, I'm empowering, and that I deliver.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us this afternoon. If you could, I think it's already done. You can drop in the chat if people want to learn more about you and your campaign, where they should go. And yeah, thank you again so much for taking the time this afternoon.
It's always great to be with you, Zayda and Jonathan. Thank you so much for being kind facilitators, and it's good to see folks. Thanks for hanging in there. I know it's been a long afternoon. This is part of our democracy work. And so it's wonderful to see so many folks committed to this work on a Saturday, on a beautiful, I won't tell you, it's actually really nice out there, a beautiful Saturday afternoon, because this is what democracy looks like. See you soon.
Thanks so much.